Memorial for Reverend Harry Adams Hersey, March 1924. It has come to our notice that the Reverend Harry Adams Hersey, pastor of St. John's Universalist Church in this city, is about to leave us and take up pastoral duties elsewhere. We deem it entirely fitting and proper that this gathering of Catholic men express their appreciation of the broad, tolerant Christian spirit which has ever been characteristic of this gentleman. During the several years spent in our midst, the Reverend Hersey has always manifested a keen and active interest in all civic undertakings for the good of the community. He has ever worked consistently and persistently for the upbuilding of the morale of the people. Whenever race or creed has been unjustly assailed, Mr. Hersey has always been to the fore in defense of the constitutional rights of the people. Here is a man who has shown himself to be an ardent advocate of the undying precepts and principles enunciated by the illustrious and beloved father of our country, whose birthday we so recently celebrated. Here is a man who really and truly believes that each part of our glorious national Constitution is just as sacred as any other part and was intended by the fathers to be observed just as religiously. We're all men professing to be teachers of the word, imbued with the true Christian spirit, as is the Reverend Hersey. Indeed, would a new and better day dawn in our country's history, and she would move steadily forward towards the glorious destiny which is rightly here. During the past 2 years, Muncie has been the central headquarters of the KKK, and since the Catholic population is less than 5%, we suffered all sorts of indignities at the hands of these people. Then, Reverend Hersey was perhaps the only minister who had the courage to publicly denounce this organization and has defended all classes and creeds whenever they have been unjustly assailed. We are pleased to commend him to the Catholic people of your city, Canton, as being worthy of your respect and cooperation, and any courtesy shown him will be appreciated by the Catholic citizens of Muncie. Excuse me. We are fraternally yours, Dennis Cleary, Grand Knight of Muncie Council, number 560. Just 101 years ago this month, the Reverend Harry Adams Hersey stood upon this dais to preach his first sermon as resident minister here. I've spent much of my life reading about historical characters. Seldom have I felt like I'd really like to meet that person. I would really like to have been able to sit down and have a long conversation with Reverend Hersey over a glass of wine. On to second thought, better make that a cup of tea, as Hersey spent many years as chairman of the Commission of Temperance of the Universalist General Assembly, and 5 years the editor of their national temperance publication in Washington, D.C. Harry Adams Hersey was born in Boston and grew up working in the family grocery. He left school in the 7th grade due to ill health and began working in the family grocery, then at a local hardware store. By the time he was 18, he co-founded the firm of Ward and Hersey, which soon became the preeminent piano tuning company in the Boston area. Along the way, Harry got involved in the sport of cycling. In 1892, he and 3 friends biked from Dorchester, Massachusetts to Boothbay, Maine and back. Unusually, at the age of 28, he sold his interest in the piano tuning company and entered high school. He attended Tufts University, receiving his bachelor's degree in 1906, and his divinity degree in 1908 at the age of 38. In 1906, he married Lottie Mae Champlin. While at their second pastorate in Caribou, Maine, true to form, Hersey biked from Caribou to Stafford, Connecticut to visit friends and family. He biked the direct route there, and as the newspaper said, was going to take a more scenic route back to Caribou. Harry Adams Hersey was a wonderful orator and soon developed a following. He first visited Canton in 1919 as part of his national tour, giving the speech, A Straight Talk, a speech urging boys and young men not to use tobacco. The commercial advertiser noted he spoke for over an hour. His presentation, with ready wit and striking illustrations, held the audience throughout. In 1920, he and Lottie and their 4 children left D.C. to take up the Universalist pastorate in Muncie, Indiana. They immediately immersed themselves in the community. Lottie was active in the WCTU, and Harry became the fundraising chair for the community's new YWCA. He campaigned on the need for modern women to have access to the same healthful exercise that men had at the YMCA. Reverend Hersey was an outspoken advocate for social reform. In Indiana, he was noted for his support of the teaching of evolution as part of a modern scientific education. This was 5 years before the Scopes trial. Science is not the enemy of religion, he wrote. He stood for the family of man and world peace through the League of Nations. He used the village blacksmith to preach for the equal worth of all types of work and classes of people. He spoke on the fallacy of associating quality of character with material worth. He advocated for the end of the sale of marriage certificates to allow equal access to the institution for all classes. He advocated for educational reform so that every child in the state could receive equal funding for their education. He spoke against the sale of Coca-Cola. He said, "It's our duty to reform thieves, not punish them." Reverend Hersey was actively involved in all levels of the community and seemingly was well liked. However, all was not well in Muncie, the national headquarters of the KKK. In midsummer 1923, one of his Sunday school teachers approached him to say something about the Klan. Some of the young women in her classes were enamored with the numerous KKK parades in Muncie. Reverend Hersey only added a few words before his regular sermon about what he saw as the divisiveness of the Klan and its evil effect on community. These few words of conscience proved too much for his Muncie congregation. In December 1923, under threat of dismissal, the Reverend Hersey announced his resignation. The Muncie Star Press noted his outspokenness on that and others issues often offended many. In January 1924, Reverend Hersey visited this church to give a candidate sermon. By late February, he had accepted the position in Canton, and what the Muncie Star Press noted was one of the largest congregations in the Universalist faith. His son Theodore was accepted into the freshman class at St. Lawrence University that same year. Reverend Hersey preached his first sermon here in March 1924. His family joined him in June. He quickly became deeply involved in the community as a member of the Silas Wright Grange, the St. Lawrence County Ministers Club, and the Red Cross. He was chaplain of the Masons, moderator for the county spelling bee, and the chaplain for the WCTU, the Women's Christian Temperance Union. Lottie joined the WCTU, soon becoming president, and was also a leader in the local Humane Society. His experience in Muncie did not deter Harry Adams Hersey from approaching hot topics. That first summer, he spoke at the Grange meeting. His topic, 100% Americanism, true or false. Real Americanism makes no discrimination between citizens, respects the Constitution, and obeys the law. Later that summer, he again spoke to the Grange on public education and science, saying, religion has no place in modern scientific public education. That first summer, he rode his bike over 600 miles, visiting the homes of all his parishioners and the surrounding Universalist congregations. His old-fashioned use of the wheel, as it was called in the time, was noted often in the local press. On a July day in 1925, he rode to a meeting in Messina in the morning, then returned home to Canton to ride to another meeting in Ogdensburg in the afternoon. One of his parishioners, offended by this behavior, offered to buy him a car. Hersey politely declined the offer. When Reverend Hersey first arrived in Canton, the KKK was just starting to organize in St. Lawrence County. Support for it grew, and in January 1925, the Universalist leader, the National Universalist Publication, asked Reverend Hersey to participate in a special issue about the Klan. In an eloquent article about the dangers of the Klan, he made sure to allow that there were good men within the Klan, and then went on to deplore their mission as one of hate that destroyed communities rather than building them up. His article was reprinted in the local Commercial Advertiser. He was the only minister in the whole of St. Lawrence County to publicly criticize the Klan in writing during this decade, when it rose to prominence locally. When Reverend Hersey gave the Union Memorial Day address at the American Theater in 1925, the Commercial Advertiser reported, Mr. Hersey's address was able, eloquent, and an appeal to the highest type of citizenry, a real Americanism without a tinge of the Klan. He continued to speak for true Americanism as he watched the Klan run a candidate in the St. Lawrence County District's attorney race in 1926, and thousands attending Klan rallies near Potsdam. Meanwhile, Reverend Hersey continued to work for the betterment of the community. He led Christmas services at the county home. He gave talks in support of the Red Cross. He spoke fondly of the Humane Society movement, which included the humane treatment of children as well as animals. He called agriculture the earliest and most sacred of all occupations. He preached sermons in support of the new sciences of psychology and sociology. He led a successful campaign to keep the American theater from showing movies on Sunday. As they said in Muncie, Reverend Hersey was not one to stand for things he didn't believe in. In January 1928, Reverend Hersey presented the day's paper at the St. Lawrence County Ministers Club meeting in Potsdam. His chosen topic for the day, the book of Revelations is an undesirable and unchristian influence contrary to the universal love of God. His remarks brought forth sharp retorts from the members of the club, as reported in the newspaper. Whether this paper was the cause is unclear, but 2 months later, Reverend Hersey announced his resignation from this Canton pulpit. By April of that year, Mr. Hersey, as he was now known, had purchased the former Sherwin-Williams music store located in the basement of the town hall. He began selling player pianos and phonograph albums and stayed involved with the community, playing Silas Wright in a local theatrical production and speaking on temperance. His practice of long-distance bike journeys now included pedaling pianos. But Reverend Hersey missed the pulpit, and in 1930 accepted the pastorship of the Danbury, Connecticut Universalist Church. The Canton Advertisers Club and the WCTU threw a going-away party for the Herseys. Reverend Hersey served in Danbury for several years before finishing his ministerial career as pastor of the Somerville, Massachusetts Universalist Church. What would Harry Adam Hersey have to say about our world today? With the crumbling of constitutional norms and resurgent racism and hate dividing the nation, for Reverend Hersey, the cup was always half full of hope. He believed in the ultimate triumph of God's undying love in his liberal church. In his words, "Seeing we are compassed about by so great a cloud, let us run our race and run it swiftly, attain the goal for others as well as self, the race against hatred, strife, discord, unholiness, war, and inhumanity. The desire of mankind is the goal of universal peace, universal goodwill, universal cooperation, and actual practice. This must be our mission." In 1947, at the age of 77, Harry Adams Hersey biked the full length of the California Coastal Highway. Here was a person with the courage of commitment to what he believed. Our congregation was fortunate to have had such a leader. I would like each of you to take a moment to look around the sanctuary. Look at the people around you. You are looking at Reverend Hersey's cup of hope. We are all the cup half full. Let's keep hope alive. Thank you.